But as to what to replace it with, there was much dispute. First, there were the fascists, the Falange. Before the war and his imprisonment, their leader, José Antonio, had tried to present a doctrine of seductive simplicity.
Tenemos una fe resuelta, es que están vivas todas las fuentes genuinas de España. España ha venido a menos por una triple división. Por la división engendrada por los separatismos locales, por la división engendrada entre los partidos y por la división engendrada por la lucha de clases. Cuando España encuentre una empresa colectiva que supere todas esas diferencias, España volverá a ser grande como en sus mejores tiempos.
The Falange's fascism was disguised by revolutionary jargon. Narciso Perales was one of its first members.
The Falange
was a revolutionary movement which wanted to carry out profound changes in the Spanish society of those times, changes which are still necessary today. José Antonio proclaimed a doctrine which resolved opposing doctrines in society. It upheld spiritual values and the belief in the fatherland as our common and universal destiny, and at the same time it aimed for a social revolution. The agrarian reform would turn the land over to the peasants so that the vision of giving the ownership of the land to those who work it would come true. Banks would be nationalized because it was considered unjust that the savings of all the Spanish people should be controlled by a few who dominated the economy of the country.
The Falange's leadership was predominantly middle class or aristocratic young men, but the movement was designed to appeal to working class sentiments, albeit staunchly anti-Marxist. Raimundo Fernandez Cuesta later became Secretary General of the Falange.
We discussed whether we should wear any distinctive clothing. José Antonio said we should wear a blue shirt. It's the same color as the proletariat's overalls. And it was the same for the flag. It was black and red because that was the flag of the anarchist trade unions. We wanted ours to be similar. The same with the word comrade, traditionally used by the communists. José Antonio said, I don't see why we shouldn't claim it ourselves. Give the word comrade a different meaning.
In spite of its pretensions, the Falange never became a mass fascist party with large working-class membership. Unlike what had happened in Germany and Italy, fascism had not taken root in Spain before the war. For one thing, the economic conditions were very different. Spain was still economically in the 19th century. The groups that might have been attracted by fascism were either satisfied by conventional politics or just non-existent. There was no large petty bourgeoisie scarred by recession or defeat in a world war. The middle class was reassured that the dominant presence of the army would protect them from revolution, and the working class had suffered no disappointment that might provoke them to find an alternative to Marxist, socialist, or anarchist ideals. In 1936, however, after the February elections when democracy disintegrated into political violence, conservative youth had begun to defect to the radical alternative, and once the war began, people flocked to the Falange. It was a demonstration of allegiance to the nationalist cause, and moreover, with the purge of working-class organizations, it became a safe haven for anybody whose background was suspiciously leftist. The blue shirt became known as a salvavidas, a life jacket. Some nationalists, however, viewed the Falange's populist and violent image with distaste.
Hubo muchísimas personas que se unieron a los falangistas.
There were many people who joined the Falangists, but I could never join them because I did not consider them to be virtuous in the Christian sense of the term. I did not think that the Falangists were Christians. I did not think that they acted in a way that I considered to be correct, and I never liked them.
Y nunca me gustaron. Hubo Una fobia contra el falangismo y contra el
There was a phobia against Falangism in my family, partly because the Theta and the Falange were totally opposed to each other, and we all belonged to the Theta.
The greatest contrast to the Falange was another faction of nationalists, the Carlists, the deeply traditionalist group based in Navarre. They lived in the romantic, almost medieval past.
Nosotros defendíamos Dios, patria y rey, que era el lema tradicional del carlismo.
We were defending God, the fatherland, and our king. This was the traditional slogan of Carlism. By God, we meant religion in its true sense, with no interference by the church in the government of the state. As for politics, we were in favor of regional rights. That is, we saw Spain as a conglomeration of regions which have, from time to time, been united by a common cause of Spanish nationality.
Franco was no fool. He recognized the potential danger of disunity in the nationalist camp. To his brother-in-law, Ramon Serrano Sr., he gave the job of devising a formula for uniting the factions.
Los objetivos eran evitar las discordias y las
The objectives were to avoid internal conflicts and rivalry, which were bound to debilitate the nascent state.
This
was Franco's view, and as commander-in-chief and leader in the war, I think he was right. He sought to establish and maintain a certain order and discipline in the rearguard. If the rearguard was left to the whims of the different groups, things could get out of hand and could affect the situation in the fighting fronts, as happened in the Republican zone.
The Falange was in trouble. Jose Antonio had been killed in a Republican jail. All other potential candidates were in prison or dead, and the organization was riven with ideological and personal schism. On April 17, 1937, a former mechanic, Manuel Edia, was confirmed as leader. He had no formal education, was unimaginative, and ineffective. He was easy meat for Franco. 2 days after his election, Franco, as head of state, declared the Falange and the Carlists would be unified in one national movement under his own direction. When Edia challenged Franco's authority, he was sentenced to death, although this sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. By bringing the red-berried Carlist and the blue-shirted Falange movement under his direct leadership, Franco assured the triumph of his personal brand of authoritarian conservatism and the unity of his supporters. The man who claimed to support the restoration of the monarchy had made himself a dictator. True supporters of the king, like Eugenio Vegas Latapie, were outraged.
It seemed as if the new state created by Franco wasn't so much a state as a dictatorship run exclusively by him. Don Pedro Sainz Rodriguez says with some accuracy that the difference between laws and decrees in Franco's regime was that Franco pulled decrees out of one pocket and laws from the other. Everything was the exclusive wish of the Generalissimo.
Franco's regime was a conservative dictatorship, but it was cloaked in symbols and ritual of fascism. In the European economic depression of the 30s, fascism could be seen, and was seen, by many as an up-to-date alternative to the politics of class struggle. To unite a nation, even forcibly, in one supposed common interest, was a superficially attractive doctrine. At least it provided Franco, the reactionary soldier, with a facade of modern political ideology. Franco saw his task as blending the conflicting elements of the new Spain while maintaining the traditional values of the old.